All right, coming up, we're going to take a look at some Bears trade targets that they could consider trying to bring in here before roster cut down day. A couple of positions where they could add some talent that have caught my attention. But I want to hear from you fans. Any player, who should the Bears trade for? Let me know, and let's dive in. I'm Harrison Graham. This is Chicago Bears Now. I'm going to break down 5 players that the Bears could trade for before roster cut down day. Now, that day is coming quick. August 26th at 3 o'clock Central Time. So that is this upcoming Tuesday. That is when 53-man rosters are due. The next day, the waiver wire hits at noon Central. So if the Bears put out any roster claims and land any players from other cuts around the league, they will then have to cut that same amount of players to make room. So that 24 hours can be pretty busy. So be sure you have us locked in. This is not a Trey Hendrickson, Micah Parsons video. Obviously, these are guys that are out there and could get traded at any point. But the guys I'm focusing on are more like smaller, mid type of names, guys that have been rumored that could move. You know, you see a lot of these pick swap trades, day 3 pick trades between now and roster cut down day. So that's kind of what we're focusing on here. Let's start with a name that's been in the headlines recently, Brian Robinson Jr. We talked about him a little bit on another video as well, but the Commanders have been actively shopping him. In his 3 NFL seasons, he's basically averaging 775 yards rushing. He's a big, physical, downhill runner at 6'1", 225. Not the most agile and fast back, but a physical player who can run between the tackles and wear down a defense. And I think a player who would complement DeAndre Swift pretty well. We're not really sure what Roschon Johnson's timeline is. It doesn't sound like Kyle Monungai's injury is something that's going to linger too long. We know what Travis Homer is. He's a specialist. These other guys are practice squad caliber players. I think this would be if you bring him in here, does that mean Roschon is out? Is he someone you would cut or IR stash or something like that? So keep an eye on that. Nikki Javella, by the way, who's covered the Commanders for a while, reported that Dan Quinn, this was on Wednesday, said no update on Brian Robinson. He's been excused from practice today, and quote, we hope to find or have a resolution to that soon. So they're trying to move him. They're trying to find him a new home. They're trying to get some kind of draft pick back. It's not going to cost much. When you're this out front in the public about, hey, like we're shopping him, they'll take probably a 6th and maybe even a 7th round pick, maybe even a pick swap. I think he's better than just flat out getting cut. You know, I've had people DM me, just wait till he's cut, then go get him. Well, the reason you see these small trades in terms of draft comp value is so you don't have to rely on waivers, so you don't have to bid with other teams if he clears waivers. Like, that's the whole point of why you do this. And it's been reported that the Commanders would eat some of his $3 million and change. So if you cut that in half and get him for a 6th or 7th round pick or a pick swap, $1.5 million for a guy who probably give you 700 plus rushing yards, I'm a big fan of that type of move if it is available. We'll come back to running back in a bit, but how about a name that we haven't talked about at all, Cam Robinson. So the Houston Texans signed Cam Robinson to a 1-year up to $12 million deal with like $10 million guaranteed, but that $10 million I think is already paid off. And the way his contract is structured, a lot of it is like incentive based. So, and it's tied to Houston. Here's the thing. He's probably not going to win the left tackle job. He was getting a lot of work with the ones. Then he got a little nicked up. Ariante Ursary, a player I loved in the draft, he started getting those reps. Titus Howard getting work on the right side, and the reports out of camp is that Ursary's been awesome. Now, the most recent practice, Robinson started to rotate back in with the ones, so if he's still in the mix to start at left tackle, Houston likely wouldn't trade him. But if it was clear that Ursary's going to win that job and they still have Blake Fisher who could be a swing tackle, then a guy like Cam Robinson, especially if they don't want to pay him those incentives on a game-to-game basis, could be available. And look, I think he's an above-average left tackle. The Vikings traded for him at the deadline last year once Darisaw went down. He has started over 100 games in this league. He's an above-average pass blocker. He's not the best run blocker, but what has Ben Johnson consistently said? We want our tackles to be able to block one-on-one on an island. Cam Robinson probably has a better resume of doing that at left tackle than anyone on this roster, and that includes a fully healthy Braxton Jones, which I don't think we've seen the best version of Braxton Jones during this left tackle competition. That just has not been that great. For the second week in a row, Ozzie Trapillo has been working at right tackle. Seems like he's out of the mix to start. Theo Benedette has been the primary guy to push Braxton Jones in the last week and a half or so. Sounds like Braxton's going to be the guy. I don't think there's some huge gap between Cam Robinson and Braxton Jones, but Robinson's healthy. He started over 100 games in this league. I do think he's better in pass pro. So I don't know if Houston decides that they're going with Ursery and they want to shed some potential cash that they would have to pay. I could see them flipping Robinson for like a late day 3 pick. Do you want to bring in a guy this late in the process to try to learn the offense and be your left tackle? It's not ideal, but the way this competition is played out isn't ideal. Ben Johnson said so himself, like, it's not ideal that no one has just stolen this job. So I'm at least interested here, especially if it doesn't cost that much. And if you trade for him, it's only a $3.25 million cap hit. It's like no money. So I would at least make that phone call if I'm Ryan Poles, especially if you get through this Chiefs game and it's not a great game from Braxton Jones. Should the Bears trade for a left tackle? Yes or no? What say you? I want to hear from Bears fans down in the comment section below. All right, I scoured the edge market. Obviously, Micah, Trey Hendrickson, those guys speak for themselves. Anfernee Jennings has been made available by the New England Patriots. Pretty good run stopper, okay pass rusher, not a ton of production there. His pass rush win rate isn't terrible, but not a lot of sack production, 5.5 sacks in 61 games. But he's played a lot of ball for the Patriots. He's played under Belichick as well, so I do like that. And he's graded out above average as a run defender. We know Dennis Allen values that. Now, he's like 6'3", 255. Like, he's bigger than a Daniel Hardy, but he's not exactly a Tano Passanio either, so it's probably not a perfect scheme fit. But Austin Booker's dinged up. Dominique Robinson's dinged up. Those guys are relatively unproven anyway. Robinson at this point, anything you get would be a luxury. I am high on Booker, but he's still a relative unknown. But even if he hits, that 4th spot, is it Passanio? Do you bring in a guy like Anfernee Jennings? This would be like a late-round pick swap because the Patriots are advertising, hey, come get him. So, you send a 6th for Jennings and a 7th and call it a day type of deal. I'd be open to that. A player of his caliber, we know he can be a rotation rusher, especially against the run early down. So potentially a name to monitor between now and Cutdown Day. Get yourself a Caleb Williams jersey today for only $100. Chatsports.com/Caleb jersey. These are Nike authentic jersey. Don't know how long this price is going to last. Once the season gets here, they could jack them back up. So check it out right now. Chatsports.com/Caleb jersey. Link is in the comments and in the description. All right, we'll talk about Kenneth Walker and Breece Hall here, kind of back-to-back as 3 running backs on this video along with Brian Robinson. There's been some deep rumors. I've heard a little chatter. I've seen other stuff on the internet. There's a new report out of Seattle that Seattle's kind of frustrated with Walker's nagging injuries that he's had over the years, and that's continued throughout training camp. Zach Charbonnet's impressed them, so it does make you wonder if they'd be willing to move him. I've heard other chatter that they could be willing to move him as well. I doubt they would cut him, but maybe they would trade him. Breece Hall, I haven't heard as much on the front of they would trade him, but what I have heard is they do like Braylon Allen a lot and potentially more than Breece Hall, so he may not even be the starter there. And with him also being in the last year of his contract, would you just trade him if you're the Jets? They've also been, just kind of side note here, they've been on the market for a wide receiver. Could you flip Tyler Scott in a late pick for Breece Hall? Justin Fields played with Tyler Scott. Just a thought that kind of just came to my brain as well. I think I did see one other person tweet that, but just something to consider there on that front, like a 6th-round pick in Tyler Scott for Breece Hall. Who says no? Their production's been pretty similar throughout their careers. Hall's been a little bit more efficient than Kenneth Walker. He's definitely been more productive in the receiving game as well. Walker's also been, both these guys have been dinged up at times. So I do think either guy you bring in, you'd be bringing in at least a relative injury risk. But both these guys, fully right, you could argue are better players than DeAndre Swift, and at worst, a good compliment to DeAndre Swift. So we've talked about 3 running backs here: Brian Robinson Jr., Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall. If you could pick any of them, who would you pick? If it's Brian Robinson Jr., type BR. If it's Kenneth Walker, type KW. If it's Breece Hall, type BH. I could see 1, 2, all these guys get moved between now and Cutdown Day. So something to monitor for sure. Let us know which back you like the best for Chicago. All right, guys, that'll do it for this episode of Chicago Bears Now. We will continue to monitor the trade market and everything that's going on within the NFL between now and week 1, and certainly now on roster cutdown day. So hit that subscribe button and bear down.